I'm going to talk to you about literary terms or literary elements, devices, and these terms are all used interchangeably when talking about literature. I'm taking a lot of it from this textbook, Literary Terms, nice little title there, and it's a dictionary, and this one is created by Carl Bexton and Arthur Gantz. I found it helpful to have something like this on my desk when I was teaching high school, because even though you have a lot of information in your students' reading anthology and in the teacher's text and also in the glossary of both books, it seems as if there was always a question that would arise and I wouldn't have the answer to it, couldn't find it in my textbooks, and it was really nice to have this close by so I could say, okay, let's look it up in this. This is a dictionary. It's all arranged alphabetically, so this will be an alphabetically organized lecture. The first term I want to talk to you about is alliteration. That's a poetic term that's also used in prose, and it's the repetition of consonant sounds. The sounds can come, they're usually at the beginning of the word, so Tommy Tippy tips his top hat would be alliteration. The next one is allusion, and that's a reference in the text to something outside the text. It could be a political event, it could be something that within the society that everyone knows about, it could be another text, it could be drama. There are a lot of allusions in literature to biblical stories and also mythological stories, so it's important that your students and you have a background in those two areas as well. The next term that I want to discuss is antagonist, and I would like to combine that with protagonist, because once you understand the protagonist, it's easier to understand the antagonist. The protagonist is the main character of your story. It could be the narrator or it could be a character within the text, and this particular character has a goal, and that's how you'll be able to distinguish that this person is actually the protagonist. You might have a story that has two very strong characters and it's a little difficult to figure out, well, which one is the protagonist. It's the one who is trying to accomplish a goal. Occasionally there will be two protagonists. We find that in some of the more recent literature, but usually there is only one who is truly the protagonist. The protagonist has a goal, spends the entire book trying to reach that goal, and the antagonist is the person or thing that hinders the protagonist accomplishing that goal. So it could be another character, or it could be the protagonist himself or herself. If the protagonist is struggling with some sort of inner turmoil and has to overcome that before she can accomplish her goal, then the protagonist is also the antagonist. In most stories, it will be another character, but not always. And it's really interesting when you have one character serving filling both slots in the story. All right, the next thing I want to talk to you about is archetypes. And there can be both situational and character archetypes. I'm going to go to another text for a little bit more information on this, and I'm talking to you from the text From Hinton to Hamlet. Using young adult literature is a really good way to help the students identify these kinds of archetypes. You could kind of say an archetype is a category, and so there are certain stories that follow certain structures, and one of those is the structure of birth, death, and rebirth. And that doesn't have to be physical, it can be emotional or spiritual or psychological. And then another situational archetype is the fall and the expulsion from Eden. See, we're already doing allusion to biblical things, but it will be a story where the character is in a pretty good situation and then something happens and that character loses his position or loses his membership in this particular group. Another situational archetype is the journey. Many stories are based on this. The character is going from point A to B or C or D, and again, it could be a physical journey. You find this a lot in stories about animals. Or it could be an emotional journey, it could be a psychological journey, it could be a spiritual journey, or a journey into relationships. Another one is the test or trial. Many stories are based around this, and of course that would be a little bit easier to find, I would think, because there's something that the character has to overcome, something that's going to make the character stronger because of having to pursue this struggle. Then the situation of annihilation, absurdity, total oblivion, and what happens in these is that in order for the character to exist in a world that is just intolerable, the character has to accept that life is going to be absurd or ridiculous. And some of the stories that are in that are the Chocolate War, Chinese Handcuffs, The Giver. You've read some of those. Catch-22 is that way in The Invisible Man as well. Then we have the situation of parental conflicts and relationship conflicts. And of course, in young adult literature, it will be rife with the parental conflicts. But you have all kinds of conflicts between people in that archetype. And then we have the character archetype of the wise old woman or the wise old man. Think of Karate Kid, Mr. What's-His-Face, the little gentleman that encouraged the little boy to become a better fighter and to address his problems through the martial arts. In Star Wars, Yoda, of course, who could forget Yoda, and many others as well. In Romeo and Juliet, the nurse is the wise old woman. The hero, just think about anything where you have a strong character who is trying to accomplish great things and go through lots of struggles. And when I tell you that, you can also see that you can have an archetypal story or situation and an archetypal character in that story as well. And then the sacrificial redeemer, someone in the story who gives himself or herself for the betterment of the entire community. Since we're doing this alphabetically, let's go ahead and finish up with the term assonance, A-S-S-O-N-A-N-C-E. Your students will love to use that term. And this is the repetition of vowel sounds. For example, the lonely wind blew mournfully through the open door, open window. You see the O through there, and the O sound may change from long to short, but still you have that sound of an O, and that's assonance.